He walked into the diner like always, coffee, bacon, silence. But a young waitress's tattoo stopped him cold. And just like that, the war he never spoke of came rushing back. It was Wednesday morning and Jack stepped into the same small diner on the corner just like he had every week for the past 5 years. The wooden door creaked open and the familiar jingle of the bell above greeted him like an old friend. The scent of fresh coffee and sizzling butter drifted through the air, mixing with the warm rays of sun filtering through the dusty window panes. There was nothing fancy about the place, but maybe that was why it felt like the only space where he could breathe. There was a new face behind the counter today, a young black waitress, her hair pulled into a neat bun, her posture poised and quiet. She walked over to Jack's usual table with a calm grace and a gentle smile. "You're regular, sir?" she asked, her voice steady and kind, as though she'd been serving him for years. Jack nodded. No words, just the usual gesture. He didn't need a menu. Every Wednesday for 5 years, he'd order the same thing. Soft eggs, crispy bacon, and black coffee.
No cream, no sugar.
Not because he liked it, but because that's what he ate on the last morning before everything changed. His eyes followed the steam rising from the coffee cup, but his mind drifted elsewhere, back to 1969, back to the jungles of Vietnam. He could still smell the wet soil, hear the buzz of insects, the distant thump of helicopter blades, and the short, shallow breath of scared young soldiers trying to act like men.
Enrichest.
That was their unit. His unit. He'd led them. Most of them never came home. They were memories he never talked about, not even to his children. They knew their father had served. They knew he'd been an officer. They saw the medals in a dusty box, but they didn't know about the nights he couldn't sleep. The thunderstorms that made him grip the sheets. The dreams that left him drenched in sweat and staring at the ceiling. His wife once said, "You brought the war home in your eyes, but never once in your words." And one day, she'd simply stopped waiting to understand. She left just like so many other things in his life. Today was supposed to be like any other day. Sit, eat, pay, leave. No small talk, no stories. He didn't need anyone to understand. The people who understood it all died in a jungle halfway across the world. But then something happened. The young waitress bent over to pick up a napkin from the next table, and her white sleeve slipped just slightly down her arm. A small, seemingly meaningless moment. Nothing special except that Jack saw it. Tattoo. Small, clean, clear, and it froze him. A wolf's head with broken wings. Beneath it, B6 until the end. His heart clenched. His hand paused midair. The spoon dropped onto the plate with a soft clang. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. He knew that mark. There was no mistaking it. It was the exact symbol of Bravo 6. Not the official unit patch. No, that one had been drawn by hand by the youngest soldier in their team, Marcus, after their first ambush. Only they knew it. Only they wore it. Only they lived it. And Marcus had never come home. Jack couldn't remember the last time he cried. But in that moment, in that quiet morning light, something inside him cracked. He was supposed to leave, to stand up, pay, and go. But his feet wouldn't move. Not today. Today wasn't like every other day. When the waitress's sleeve slipped down, Jack saw it. A small tattoo just beneath her left elbow where the skin was soft and young. And for a moment, the world around him simply stopped. It wasn't a trendy design. Not a flower, not a heart, not some meaningless script. It was something else. A wolf's head, fierce and focused, with 2 broken wings spread behind it. Beneath the symbol, B6 until the end. Jack couldn't look away. He had seen it before. He was the one who first drew it on the back of a helmet with charcoal the night before a deadly mission. It wasn't official. It wasn't part of any army manual. It was theirs. Bravo 6, a private symbol between brothers. It meant loyalty. It meant protection. It meant we don't leave each other behind. A shiver ran down Jack's spine. Couldn't be. No one else outside the unit ever knew about that mark. And the few survivors, he knew every one of them. This girl, she was far too young. She couldn't possibly. Jack stood up abruptly like he'd been yanked out of memory. But instead of walking away, he dropped back into his seat heavy, shaken, as if the weight of years had suddenly come crashing down on him. Silence filled the space. The young woman turned, concerned. "Are you okay, sir?" Her voice was soft but steady. Jack didn't answer right away. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Deep brown eyes, calm, honest, no threat, no game. He tried to keep his voice steady, but it trembled like an old guitar string pulled too tight. "That tattoo? Does it mean something to you?" She paused for a long moment. She just stood there. Then slowly she rolled her sleeve up fully, revealing the whole mark. "I got it to honor my grandfather," she said, her voice quieter now. "He died in Vietnam. His name was Private Marcus Hale." That name, Jack could barely breathe. Marcus Hale. It was a name etched into his memory for over 50 years. Silent, unspoken, heavy. Marcus had been the youngest in the unit, barely 19, grin too wide, holding a rifle too big for his frame. He wrote his mama every week and ended every letter with the same line. "I'm still okay. Don't worry." Marcus loved soul music. He sang under his breath while they marched, shared his last crackers, his last cigarette, and when they were ambushed, it was Marcus who shoved Jack out of the way, taking a hit that ended his own life. After the war, Jack had looked Marcus' mother in the eye, frail and trembling on her front porch, and promised he'd bring her boy home. But war doesn't care about promises. And Jack lived year after year, built a family, grew old while Marcus stayed 19 forever, buried in a jungle far from home. No grave, no headstone, forgotten by everyone but a handful of men with ghosts in their hearts. Until now here stood this girl, this stranger carrying the name and mark of the boy who saved his life. Carrying it on her skin, Jack raised a hand to his face, not to wipe away tears, though they were coming, but to hold the flood of memory back. Faces flashed behind his eyes. Names he hadn't dared say aloud in decades. Nights he hadn't slept. Thunderstorms that made him brace for impact, even in bed. The young woman sat down across from him quietly. No more questions. No need to speak. In that moment, there was no distance between them. Not in age, race, or history. There was only a thread, invisible but real, woven from sacrifice, remembrance, and the life of a soldier who never got to come home. Jack looked at her again, really saw her. She had Marcus' eyes, calm and determined, and her voice, though soft, carried that same quiet strength. "You know," Jack said, his voice rough, "your grandfather was a hero." She gave a small sad smile. "I only know he died before I was born. My mom didn't talk much about the war, but she kept his last letter in a frame. And even as a little girl I understood. If he were here, he'd tell me everything." Jack nodded slowly. Today he knew he would be the one to tell her. They sat together longer than a typical breakfast would allow. No longer waitress and customer, just two people, one old, one young, bound by the memory of Marcus Hale, a soldier time never truly erased. She told Jack about the grandfather she never got to meet, about the stories her mother only whispered on Memorial Day, about the last letter he sent from the battlefield, written in smudged ink on rain-stained paper, but kept in a frame like a family heirloom. He wrote, "I'm still okay. Don't worry. It rains a lot here, but my brothers keep my spirits up. I promise I'll come home." She paused. But he never did. Jack said nothing at first. He didn't interrupt. He let her speak. Let her voice fill the quiet corner of the diner. Then it was his turn. He told her about Marcus, not as a name carved in stone, but as a 19-year-old boy who hummed Marvin Gaye in the jungle, who always split his last cracker with a buddy, who scribbled letters in shaky handwriting because a helicopter's overhead made the ground vibrate. He used to joke, Jack smiled faintly, that if they made it home, he'd open a soul music cafe with apple pie and jukeboxes. She chuckled through her tears. "I always wanted to open a cafe one day. Maybe that dream didn't die. Maybe it just passed on." Time seemed to melt away. The sunlight that had once lit the room bright and clear now lay warm and golden across the faded tile floor. She looked down at her tattoo, traced it gently with one finger, and said softly, "I know it doesn't really fit the image of a proper waitress. Some customers glare when they see it. But to me it's a reminder that my grandfather lived, that he fought, that he gave everything, and that people like him shouldn't be forgotten." Jack nodded, his eyes softer than they'd been in years. His voice was low and dry. "The last time I saw Marcus, he was pushing me out of the line of fire. I'm alive today because he isn't. And today, because of you, I feel like he's still alive somehow. In you, in your voice, in the way you carry him." She looked at him with eyes damp but steady. She didn't speak right away. Then, reaching into her apron, she pulled out a small piece of paper, scribbled something on it, and slid it across the table. "This is my email. If you ever remember more about him, I'd love to hear it. Truly, I never thought I'd meet the last person who saw my grandfather alive." Jack took the paper as if it were a missing piece of a letter left unsent for over 50 years. He hadn't written to anyone in a long time, but now he knew he would because the stories he carried, the weight of the years, the faces, the ghosts, someone was finally ready to listen. Not out of curiosity, but out of blood, out of connection, out of an unfinished promise. When Jack stood to leave, he was no longer just an old man with a silent past and a bowed back. He walked slowly, yes, but lighter, as if something long buried had finally been laid to rest. At the door he turned once more. She was still there, standing at the counter, one hand gently resting on her tattoo, almost like a thank you to the man she'd never held. And for the first time in years, Jack smiled genuinely. He was no longer alone. Not because the war had left him, but because at last he'd found someone. Someone from the next generation who understood how much it had truly cost and why it mattered. If you believe that the memories of those who gave their lives should never be forgotten, please share the story with others. A simple act like that can help preserve sacred memories, values that time can never erase. If the story moved you, share it. Someone out there needs to remember. Subscribe for more true tales of sacrifice, legacy, and the quiet heroes time almost forgot. Because memories like these, they deserve to live forever.